Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter 867, Chapter. In the silent aftermath of battle, laughter suddenly rang out beneath the open sky. Ling Han stood calmly before Hu Jianyi, his voice carrying the sharp edge of mockery as he said, "Tell me, on what grounds should I believe that a dog could suddenly abandon its vile nature?" The insult struck like a slap across the sect master's pride. Hu Jianyi's lips curled into a cold sneer, but his eyes glittered with vicious cunning. He lifted his chin and spoke with chilling confidence. "You think I came here unprepared? I've already planted a secret technique inside those women. With nothing more than a thought from me, their hearts will burst instantly, and they will die on the spot." He paused deliberately before adding another cruel twist. "And there's more. The moment my own heart stops beating, they will die along with me. Tell me, Ling Han, as the ruler of the great Ling Empire, can you bear the deaths of those innocent women just to kill me?" The air grew tense. Ling Han slowly shook his head. "No." At that single word, joy flashed across Hu Jianyi's face like sunlight breaking through clouds. His shoulders relaxed slightly as he barked triumphantly. "Then hurry up and swear an oath! Promise you'll let me go." But Ling Han merely smiled. The smile was calm, almost amused. "Who said anything about letting you go?" Ling Han replied lightly. "You really are shameless. Don't flatter yourself so much." Hu Jianyi's expression twisted with rage. Flames of fury seemed ready to burst from his eyes. "You dare mock me?" he snarled. "I am the sect leader of the Wind Moon sect. If I must die, I'll destroy everything with me. With so many beautiful women dying alongside me, at least I won't be lonely in the afterlife." Ling Han chuckled softly, as if listening to a ridiculous joke. "I already told you, keep dreaming. Why are you still so narcissistic?" Humiliation burned through Hu Jianyi's chest. "Fine," he roared viciously. "Then I'll kill a few of them first, as a warning." From the very moment Ling Han had risen to sovereignty over the Middle State, he had already anticipated that enemies would eventually resort to desperate, despicable methods like this. Naturally, he had never intended to sit still and wait for death. If survival required cruelty, then cruelty it would be. Hu Jianyi believed he held the upper hand. He believed Ling Han would hesitate. But suddenly, a flash of movement! Something blurred before Hu Jianyi's eyes faster than thought itself. For a brief moment he could only stare blankly, confusion flooding his mind. Then he heard it. 2 heartbeats. 2 distinct rhythmic thumps echoing before him. His brows furrowed. 2? There was only one opponent standing before him, wasn't there? Slowly, his gaze shifted. He saw Ling Han standing there calmly, his hand extended forward. In Ling Han's palm was a bloody crimson heart, and it was still beating. Thump, thump, thump. Pain suddenly exploded inside Hu Jianyi's chest. A horrifying realization crawled through his mind. He lowered his head. There, in the center of his chest, was a gaping, bloody hole. Blood poured out steadily, staining his robe's dark red. Only then did the truth strike him like lightning. The heart in Ling Han's hand was his. When? When had Ling Han torn it out? The question flickered through his mind, but the answer never came. His consciousness was already dissolving into darkness. He had intended to issue the command, to activate the technique, to slaughter everyone here and drag them all down to death with him. But now, he couldn't even form the thought. His vision blurred. All he could see was Ling Han's icy gaze staring back at him without the slightest ripple of emotion. Then, Hu Jianyi's fading consciousness slipped away completely. His body collapsed. The sect master of the Wind Moon sect died with confusion still lingering in his eyes. Ling Han stepped lightly onto the platform. The moment he arrived, an overwhelming aura surged outward like a rising tidal wave. Pang! 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 Everyone present trembled violently as though struck by invisible chains. Under the crushing pressure of Ling Han's presence, none of them could even move a finger. His divine sense swept across the area. Pa! Pa! The disciples of the Wind Moon sect collapsed one after another, their hearts shattered instantly by Ling Han's invisible power. Not a single one was spared. At the same time, the imprisoned women were freed from their restraints, using a heaven-tier technique to try and threaten him. A pitiful attempt. Ling Han soon summoned guards from nearby cities and instructed them to escort the rescued women safely back home. As the ruler of an empire, such trivial matters did not require his personal supervision. Afterward, Ling Han connected his consciousness with the Empire's totem. Through that spiritual link, his perception spread across the entire lower realm like a vast net. He stood motionless. One day passed. Then suddenly, Ling Han's eyes snapped open. I found it! Without hesitation, he rose into the air and flew toward another location within the Middle State. One day later, Ling Han arrived at a small, quiet town. Through the totem's awareness, he had detected the presence of someone here just a day earlier, a member of the Thousand Corpse sect, one of its generals, Corpse Boss. Before ascending to the immortal realm, Ling Han had already decided on one thing. The Thousand Corpse sect must be completely eradicated. Compared to them, the other remnants of the five great sects, such as the Sword King and his allies, had vanished like ghosts. They were likely hiding deep within remote mountains or dense forests, waiting silently for the day immortals descended upon the lower realm. But the Thousand Corpse sect, they would not escape. Ling Han walked calmly through the streets, quietly searching for traces of Corpse Boss. Eventually, he arrived beside a river. There, on a large stone near the riverbank, stood a young man. The boy stared silently at the flowing water. His expression shifted constantly. One moment burning with anger, the next heavy with disappointment. He appeared to be no more than 15 or 16 years old. Yet his face carried the weight of someone who had already suffered cruel blows from fate. Ling Han walked closer and asked casually, "Planning to jump?" The young man's clothes were clearly expensive garments of high quality, but the fabric had grown faded and old. It was obvious the same outfit had been worn again and again for a long time. The boy turned and glanced at Ling Han before regaining his composure. "Don't worry," he said flatly. "I'm not going to jump." Ling Han smiled. "From the look on your face, it seemed like you might jump at any moment." The young man frowned slightly. "That's none of your business." Ling Han was not in any hurry anyway, so he leaned casually nearby and said, "Come on, tell me about it. What kind of grievance pushed you to stand here looking like that?" The boy looked at him again. Normally he would never open his heart to a stranger, but something about Ling Han's calm presence and the quiet wisdom in his words slowly loosened the knot in his chest. Before he realized it, the story began pouring out. "My name is Ding Ping," the boy said. "I'm the eldest heir of the Ding family. Since I was young, I've always been incredibly strong as an ox. My clan called me a genius. Everyone in the family valued me greatly." He paused. "I even had a beautiful fiancée." His fist slowly clenched. "But as the years passed, my spirit base never awakened." The bitterness in his voice deepened. "It took until half a year ago for it to finally awaken, but when it did," he laughed bitterly, "it turned out to be a wilted spirit base, completely useless, impossible to cultivate with. Everything changed overnight. My family now treats me like trash." My fiancé cancelled our engagement. Ding Ping's eyes burned with resentment. "I hate it," he said through clenched teeth. "Why would the heavens treat me like this?" Then his voice dropped into something even darker. "What angers me even more is that I've worked harder than anyone else for years. Why am I still worse than everyone else?" Ling Han listened quietly. Then he said calmly, "In this world, effort alone does not guarantee success." Those words struck Ding Ping like a hammer. Already drowning in frustration, the boy felt as if someone had stabbed straight into his wounded heart. But Ling Han continued calmly. "However, if you don't work hard, then success will definitely never come." He studied Ding Ping carefully. "You mentioned your strength earlier. Are you really that strong?" A hint of pride finally appeared on the boy's face. "Yes." He straightened his posture. "Even people who have cultivated for 4 or 5 years wouldn't dare compete with me in strength." That statement surprised Ling Han slightly. After 4 or 5 years of cultivation, one would usually reach the 5th layer of the body refining tier. For an untrained youth to surpass them in pure strength, that was unusual. "Show me," Ling Han said. Ding Ping hesitated briefly. He had been too depressed to bother showing off his abilities. Yet somehow, Ling Han's words carried an invisible authority that compelled him to act. The boy leaped down from the rock. Then he bent down and grabbed the massive boulder beneath his feet. With a roar of effort, he lifted it. The stone was enormous, roughly the size of an ox. It weighed at least several thousand kilograms. Ling Han's eyes widened slightly. If Ding Ping had trained in powerful body cultivation arts, this feat might not have been shocking, but Ling Han could clearly sense. The boy had never practiced such techniques. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth. His gaze penetrated through flesh and bone, examining the young man's body. Then suddenly, he understood. Ding Ping's skeletal structure was completely different from ordinary people. The arrangement of his bones created a unique leverage system, allowing him to borrow strength through astonishing mechanical efficiency. With only the force of 4 tails, he could lift objects weighing thousands of kilograms. Of course, this required his bones themselves to be extraordinarily strong, and indeed Ling Han saw mysterious patterns etched into Ding Ping's bones. Bone patterns, a natural gift rarely seen in the world. Ling Han burst into laughter. "Young man," he said warmly, "take me as your master." The afternoon sun hung quietly above the small town, its light falling upon a courtyard where a massive boulder rested like an unmoving guardian. Before it stood a young man named Ding Ping, breathing steadily after having just finished moving the stone aside with all the brute strength his body could muster. He wiped the sweat from his brow and glanced suspiciously at the young man standing before him. Ling Han. Ling Han was only a few years older than he was. Yet he'd calmly declared that he wished to take Ding Ping as his disciple. Ding Ping frowned slightly, uncertainty clouding his eyes. After a moment, he spoke with blunt honesty. "What exactly can you teach me?" he asked. "And what could someone like me possibly learn?" Those 2 questions carried different meanings. The first tested Ling Han's capability. Was he truly qualified to be a master? The second questioned Ding Ping's own condition. His spirit base had been crippled. Could someone like him even cultivate any technique? Ling Han merely smiled. Without a word, he walked toward the enormous boulder that had just challenged Ding Ping's full strength. The stone was huge, far heavier than any ordinary person could casually lift. Then Ling Han stretched out one hand. Pat! With the ease of plucking a flower from a branch, he lifted the enormous rock straight into the air. It looked as though the massive stone weighed nothing at all, like a lump of soft cotton candy. Pooh! Ding Ping's eyes bulged so wide that they seemed ready to leap from his face. His jaw dropped open in pure disbelief, and his tongue almost slipped out in shock. Although he was unable to cultivate, his natural physical strength had always surpassed that of most grown adults in town. Even so, lifting this rock alone had been completely impossible for him. Yet Ling Han was holding it with a single hand. As casually as one might toss a small pebble, Ling Han began to throw the giant stone up and catch it again. Over and over. The movement was effortless. In truth, Ling Han was deliberately restraining himself. If he did not fear frightening the boy half to death, he could have lifted an entire mountain without even breaking a sweat. His physical strength had already reached the terrifying level of the shattering void tier. Even without using a single trace of origin power, the raw power of his body alone could leave others speechless with shock. Ding Ping stared blankly. The gigantic rock that had felt like an immovable mountain in his own hands was now being tossed up and down like a toy. Was he dreaming? Or had he encountered a wandering ghost? Ling Han chuckled slightly. "Watch carefully," he said, with a slight flick of his wrist. Shoo! The boulder shot into the sky like a cannon shell. It pierced through the air with astonishing speed and vanished upward until it became nothing more than a tiny dot against the heavens. Ding Ping's mouth opened so wide that it looked as though he could swallow an entire human head. His eyes sparkled like stars. This was true power. Compared to such overwhelming strength, he himself was nothing more than a newborn child. "So what if your spirit base is crippled?" Ling Han said calmly. "If your physical strength becomes powerful enough, it can crush everything." He paused for a moment. Then he extended his palm upward toward the sky. Pah! The falling boulder dropped straight into his hand as if the heavens themselves had delivered it to him. Ling Han calmly placed it back on the ground where it had originally rested. "And besides," he added lightly, "it isn't as though a spirit base cannot be changed." The word struck Ding Ping like thunder. "Master!" Realizing that an unimaginable opportunity had appeared before him, Ding Ping immediately dropped to his knees and performed a deep kowtow, then another and another. He completed the full ritual of 3 kowtows and 9 salutations before Ling Han gently helped him back to his feet. "My surname is Ling," Ling Han said. "My given name is Han. From today onward, you will be my 5th disciple." Ding Ping blinked in surprise. Ling Han looked only a few years older than himself, yet he already had 4 other disciples? But then again, someone capable of tossing a giant boulder into the sky like a divine miracle was certainly qualified to teach others. Ling Han continued calmly. "I'm waiting here for someone. In a few days, I'll bring you back to my country." He glanced at Ding Ping thoughtfully. "However, since we have time to spare, we might as well begin your transformation now. No reason to waste the days doing nothing." Ding Ping's heart pounded. Transformation? Just hearing the word made it sound like something incredibly profound. Ling Han waved his sleeve. An alchemy furnace appeared before them. Then more items appeared. And more. Medicinal herbs, dozens upon dozens of rare plants, bottles of spiritual liquids, all materialized seemingly from thin air. Ding Ping stared with wide eyes. His master had just produced countless objects out of nowhere. Was this man truly human? Or was he some divine immortal wandering the mortal world? Ling Han noticed his shocked expression and laughed lightly. "You'll understand later." One by one, he tossed the medicinal herbs into the alchemy furnace. Then suddenly, he grabbed Ding Ping by the collar. Before the boy could react, Ling Han tossed him directly into the furnace. "Remolding will strengthen your skin, bones and flesh," Ling Han explained calmly. "It will greatly increase both your physical strength and defensive power." He paused, "But the process is extremely painful." Ling Han's gaze became serious. "You may give up at any time. But if you do, you will no longer be my disciple. My disciples may lack talent, but they must possess an unyielding will." Inside the furnace, Ding Ping clenched his fists, his eyes burned with determination. "Master," he said firmly, "I will endure it." For half a year he had lived under endless mockery and contempt. He had once been the rising star of the Ding clan, only to become worthless trash overnight. The scornful looks, the whispers behind his back, those wounds had stabbed into his heart like invisible knives. Compared to that humiliation, what was physical pain? Ling Han laughed heartily. Then he began refining. At Ling Han's current level of power, and with the priceless medicinal herbs he had gathered, this furnace contained ingredients that would make even shattering void-tier cultivators turn red with envy. Across the entire world, countless cultivators existed, but how many had successfully refined their physique to the level of level 10 precious metal? Only 2, Ma Duobao, Helian Tianyun. As for Aojian, he came from the immortal realm and did not belong to this category. In theory, if such refining were carried out every single day, it might be possible to elevate the body of an ordinary person to level 10 precious metal. But what would such a miracle require? An endless supply of priceless herbs, an alchemy emperor who had reached the 9th layer of the shattering void tier to personally conduct the process. In other words, except for Ling Han, no one else in the world possessed such capability. Inside the furnace, Ding Ping's scream tore through the air like the cry of a pig being slaughtered. The pain was unbearable. It felt as though every inch of his body was being crushed apart and rebuilt again. Yet, after shouting twice, he forced his mouth shut, his teeth clenched tightly. Blue veins bulged across his forehead. His entire body trembled violently. Cold sweat poured down like rain. Crack, crack, crack! The bones throughout his body began to make explosive sounds. This was no ordinary remolding. Ling Han was forging his bones. Bone forging meant crushing the bones to remove impurities, then reconstructing them, only to crush them again. Again and again. Just like iron being hammered repeatedly in a furnace to transform it into unbreakable steel. Ding Ping's lips pressed into a thin line. Heavy breaths rushed from his nostrils. His eyes were filled with pain and determination. Blood had already seeped from where he had bitten his lips, but his gaze never wavered. Ling Han nodded silently. The boy's bone structure was extraordinary. Even more astonishing was its natural toughness. Such a body was perfectly suited for cultivating body arts, yet natural talent alone meant nothing. To climb to the summit of martial arts, the most essential quality was unwavering willpower, a heart that refused to surrender. When facing danger, such a person would seek solutions rather than waiting helplessly for death. History had shown many times that geniuses with weak hearts rarely reached the peak, yet those with lesser talent but indomitable will could surpass them, of course. The greatest warriors possessed both. Now Ding Ping had shown that he possessed exactly those two qualities. Ling Han felt deeply satisfied. The refining process continued, one full day, one full night. During that entire time, not a single member of the Ding clan came looking for Ding Ping. It was clear that the boy who had once been their pride had already been completely abandoned. Finally, Ling Han opened the furnace. He lifted the exhausted Ding Ping out and placed him on the ground. "Follow my movements," Ling Han said. "I will now teach you a body arts cultivation technique." The name of the technique echoed like thunder, 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art. After escaping the living hell of the furnace, Ding Ping suddenly felt something incredible: power. His body was overflowing with strength. He felt as if a single punch could shatter a towering mountain. "Yes, master!" Ling Han began demonstrating the movement, while carefully explaining the mnemonic chant. Some aspects of cultivation could not be described with words alone, so Ling Han raised a finger and pointed it toward Ding Ping's forehead. Through divine telepathy, he directly transmitted the knowledge. A cultivator who had reached the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier naturally possessed such abilities. Even the 8 kings could pass down mystical powers. For Ling Han, it was effortless. Ding Ping followed each instruction carefully, but after practicing for a short while, a loud rumble erupted from his stomach like distant thunder. Ding Ping's face immediately turned red with embarrassment. He lowered his head awkwardly. He was starving.